when I started giving these lectures not that long ago, 2012, it was a very strange thing because I'd been a brahmachari, and brahmacharis don't get to do anything. And it's a funny change that happens in your life because it happens overnight, literally. You go from being completely ignored and discounted to people touching your feet when you walk in the room, and it's quite an adjustment, Actually, I'm still working on that adjustment, but when I was first asked to stand up and say something, it was one of the most difficult things to face, because I'm not a Thakur or Vivekananda who can just close my eyes and see Mother and talk about the unity from experience. It's like my bag of experience is small indeed, and so I spent a lot of time thinking about it with Ma because I didn't want to be responsible, for making things up and for saying things that aren't true, because there's a lot of religions out there, and there's a lot of philosophy out there, and there's a lot of do's and don'ts out there, and you can find a teacher to tell you anything you want to hear, and I didn't want that position, so Mother and I kind of came to this conclusion that I would not be a teacher. I've told you this before, but that I would be a cheerleader, that I would encourage you on your journey as I'm going along on mine, and to cheer you on and to be your number one fan in your practice and in your learning and your curiosity and your questions. And Mother really taught me that we were all here for her, for that realization, for God. And it's always been my number one effort in these talks to create a space in my mind and in my heart and in my own responsibility for Mother to be present, for God to be present. Because I understood that if Mother's present, I can sit here and tap my fingers and it's a benefit to everybody. If Mother's not present, I can sit here and spout the world's greatest philosophy and chant for hours in Sanskrit and it'll be worthless. The Apostle Paul says it the best for me in the New Testament when he says, that if you chant in the tongues, in the languages of the angels, but don't have love, you're nothing, just a resounding gong. And so, before these lectures, I like that moment just to focus and remember that if we sit here and listen to a lecture and Mother's not present within us, if we're not creating that space inside for God to manifest, to spend some time with that divinity that's trying desperately to manifest in our lives, in our being, then it's no value to be here. There's nothing that's going to be said that's going to be helpful if it's not manifesting in you now and in your practice and in your day-to-day life. That will just become more of the religious cacophony that doesn't matter. So let's create that space and really stand out of the way, even putting the mind aside and letting Mother manifest. This idea of solar energy came to me as a pun, really, but you got the case where I came up with the title and then had to scramble to figure out what I was talking about. So this idea, though, of karma yoga, in the early days of the order, you read the lives of these swamis and you read about their dedication and the amount of work that they were doing, and often getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep in a night, and then all day long working in an orphanage or working in the hospital or whatever they were doing. And I got to live with a Swami Chidbrahmananda who I saw very clearly slept 3, maybe 4 hours in a night. I was never tired, always was present and always steady and straightforward. And even Swami Vedanta, they're all going to hate me for telling all their secrets, but he gets up at 4 every morning, no matter what. And I've seen him go to bed at 1 or 2 and still get up at 4. I've never seen him sleep in, ever. And it didn't matter how much sleep he got the night before. And he gets tired. at times, but still that dedication was there. And you read in the scriptures certain promises. I'm going to pick a few of them from different places. These ones are from, some are from the Old Testament and in the Christian scriptures, and a little bit from the New Testament in the scriptures. In the book of Isaiah, Isaiah was a prophet that was sent to the Jewish nation to try and get them back on track. They had started misbehaving quite badly. And Isaiah says to them, "Have you not known, have you not heard, that the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, does not faint, is never weary, there is no searching of his understanding. He gives power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increases their strength. Even the youth will faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait on the Lord will renew their strength. They will mount up with wings as eagles. They will run and not be weary. They will walk and will not faint." So this promise that's there, that if you are waiting on the Lord, if your life is a service to God, if you're seeing that oneness in all things, if you're practicing that ideal of karma yoga where things are done for their own benefit, for their own sake, not for a result, not for a getting, that this is the promise. And what he's really literally saying here is that if you're practicing karma yoga properly, you'll have more energy at the end of the day than you had at the beginning of the day. That if you are practicing your karma yoga in the proper way, if you are actually working without the thought of result, without the thought of process, but being present in the moment and offering it as you do it and enjoying the doing itself, that at the end of the day you'll have more energy than at the beginning. So it's a good measure for your practice, a good measure to see how you feel at the end of your workday. If you come home tired, try again tomorrow. If you come up worn out, that's a good indicator. Try again tomorrow, to be more present in it. I'm going to read a poem here from Hafiz, and then jump into quite a few different things, talking about what the Master has to say about this and how to find this place, because it's an important place to find if this is possible. Because so much of our life, many things we say we can't do because we don't have the time, or we're too tired, or so many of our relationship problems happen because we get cranky, we get short-tempered, we don't have the patience. And if we can figure this out, if we can work this out, we can get beyond that and live a very different reality, live a very different life. Hafiz, in his poem that he wrote about 1,400 years ago probably, he says, "Forgiveness is the cash you need. All other kinds of silver really buy just strange things. Everything has its music. Everything has genes of love inside. But learn from those courageous, addicted lovers of glands and opium and gold. Look, they cannot jump high or laugh long when they are whirling. And the moon and the stars become sad when their tender light is used for night wars. Forgiveness is part of the treasure you need to craft your falcon wings and to return to your true realm of divine freedom." He's giving us a clue there. Did you hear it? Did you pick up on it?
Can you say that again? Sorry,
Yeah. Forgiveness is the cash you need. All other kinds of silver really buy just strange things. Everything has music. Everything has the genes of love inside. But learn from those courageous, addicted lovers of glands and opium and gold. Look, they cannot jump high or laugh long when they are whirling, and the moon and the stars become sad when their tender light is used for night wars. Forgiveness is part of the treasure you need to craft your falcon wings and return to your true realm of divine freedom. He's saying here, the addicted lovers of glands, the secretions of the body. Those people who get their pleasures through the body. Those people who are doing the pleasures through drugs, through opium. those who are getting their pleasures through power and gold. He says, look at them. He calls them courageous because they're working their way through this life with nothing. I mean, there's a great deal of compassion to be inspired in that thought. The meaningless of this world, when you look at it from a purely materialistic perspective, there's nothing here. There's nothing. Everything becomes optional. Love actually turns in on itself, becomes almost a bitter thing because of the pain associated with it when it's done out of selfishness, when it's done out of an accounting. He says, learn from those people, learn from those experiences of your life, that you can't jump high enough, you can't laugh long enough, you can't dance forever. Everything in this world has its expiration date stamped on it. That love from the senses, that pleasure from the senses, lasts minutes, an hour if you're lucky, 3 hours if you're really lucky, 4 hours, who knows? The night out on the town, how long does it last, the satisfaction? I spent so many years clubbing like that, actually 7 nights a week at one point. And I can remember those nights when I would stumble home to my apartment alone and lay there in bed, and all the fun that was had and all the merriment that was engaged in and all the craziness, it was gone. And I was once again laying alone in my bed and had gained nothing, had built nothing, had accomplished nothing. And that's what Hafiz is saying. He says, pay attention to these things, because that's where your exhaustion comes from. If you're collecting things that are constantly expiring and constantly needing to be replaced and constantly needing to be upgraded and constantly needing to be cleaned, you're going to be exhausted. This life is going to be exhausting for you because you will always lay down in that bed by yourself with nothing. And that's a hard experience to face, and that's why he calls them courageous. Those people who keep their life going, even in the face of that. He calls them courageous. There's respect and there's love for them, but he says learn from them. And he says, that's the source of the night wars, of all these wars, of living in the dark. Is our need for oil, our need for money, our need for control, our need for power, our need for all of those things. That's the ultimate outcome of it. And so what is this forgiveness? This forgiveness is that willingness to admit to yourself that you've got to try again. You've got to try something different. That willingness to let go inside and to try something new, something different, which is very difficult to do. If you've gone I always go to my own experience, and I hope it's not because I'm egotistical about it, but it's really all I've got to share. But I can remember at that time, I was 35 years old when I was laying in bed that night, that I shared with you, that I was looking around and realized that I had nothing more than I had when I was in college. Everything had just gotten bigger. The TV was bigger, the stereo was bigger, the house was bigger, the bed was bigger, my bills were bigger, my car was bigger. And I sat there thinking, my God, if I just keep going like this, when I'm 70, I'm going to be laying in a giant California king-size bed, in a big fat mansion somewhere if I keep going the direction, and the giant car, and my TV will be unbelievable, the home theater. But I'll not have anything more. And if I'm not that degree happier now than I was in college, which I wasn't any happier, at all, I was very much the same person, that I was going to go nowhere with that. So the Master says, Thakur says, worldly people wander about the 4 quarters of the earth for the sake of happiness. They don't find it anywhere. They only become tired and weary. When through their attachment to lust and greed, they only suffer misery, then they feel an urge, an urge toward dispassion and renunciation. And at last they build a hut in one place and settle down there. Then, free from worry and effort, they meditate on God. So Thakur himself is telling us, that in this task to find happiness in things and relationships and people and families and whatnot, it will just wear you out. It'll just tire you. He says, ultimately you'll come to that understanding and you'll return to yourself. That's the good news. All of us are going to make it home. Some of us soon, some of us after lunch, some of us at dinner, Thakur says, but everybody's coming home. So that's the promise, that we're all going to get there. But he's saying, pay attention to this and understand that that which you're looking for is within you. I was talking to those kids this morning. That's such a such a painful thing to do. Because when you're talking to a child, you remember being that child. And you hear yourself saying the same things that adults said to you when you were a child. And you know what you were thinking when you were a child at what they were saying. And you know the connection's just not happening. You know that they're just like, there's nothing you can come up with that as cool as you try to be, you're a nerd. As hip as you try to be with your language and whatnot, you're still a poser. They're just not going to see it at all. And because you're a separate species, they're born into a world that has old people and them. They haven't really made that connection that you are them, and you don't get that connection until it's too late, until you're that tottering old man walking around, trying to show the teenagers you can ride a skateboard. But so I was sitting there trying to tell them this morning, and I can understand the master must feel this way when he's trying to tell us. He's like, look, okay, I'm telling you, you're just going to get tired if you keep trying to find your satisfaction in this world. You're going to end up just building a little hut one day, and you're going to come to an understanding that just meditating on God is where it's at. And he's looking at you, and he knows you're thinking inside, oh yeah, I'm meditating on God. Oh yeah, that. Yeah, I've done that. There's nothing there. No fun, no enjoyment, whatever. There's no way that he can give us what he has. All of these saints, even Hafiz and all of his amazing poetry that I love to read, I can tell when I read it that I can't understand it at all, what he's looking at. When he's talking about jeweled dolphins jumping through fiery whirls of life, to me I'm like, ooh, that's beautiful, that's cool. But I know that what he's trying to talk about in that craziness of jeweled dolphins, that what he's seeing, that he's having to put into words like that, I have no idea. I can't see it. And see, this is that we are those children. We're those guys sitting on the floor, listening to Thakur and being like, yeah, that's cool. Nah. You're Thakur, Yeah, those things are for you. You experience those things, And he tells you, he's sitting there telling you, life is misery, listening to the Buddha. Life is misery, life is suffering. You're like, it's not that bad. I'm all right. I'm doing all right. I have a pretty good car. My family's pretty nice. Nice job. I'm not totally unhappy with it. Anyway, I'm going places. That kind of notion. But he's sitting there because he's experiencing something, a joy and an expansion and a reality of being that his senses can't even contain. Thakur, we read about it and we don't understand it. This guy's popping off into ecstasy 3, 4, 5 times a page. And we just kind of read through it like, oh yeah, samadhi, okay, yeah, that, okay, that. He's gone again. Because we don't get it at all. If we had any association with what he was actually experiencing at that moment, we ourselves would fall out of the chair. We ourselves would be reminded of something that shorts out the senses. The senses are not big enough to hold it. The mind cannot contain it. That when he saw it, when he experienced it, which doesn't work because oneness isn't experienced, but when he went into what we think is an experience, he shorted out his whole body. His mind shut down, his heart shut down, his senses shut down. He was gone. The doctor could go up and poke his eyeball and get no reaction from him at all. He shorted it out. There was so much power there. There was so much ecstasy there. There was so much bliss there, so much joy in his experience of the divine and seeing things as they are, that he shorted out, popped out. You know, and we read it and we're like, okay, yeah, so, all right. That's cool. That's cool. You know. And so to wake up to this reality, because they're, you know, just like when I was talking to those kids this morning, trying to tell them that this is relative to their life, that this is actually worthwhile, you know, to sit there and tell them that religion, oh, this is real, God is real, and they're like, you know, you know, I'm just an old fart telling them that God is real. There's nothing there. And it's I see that's our struggle, that's our challenge in these things, is to touch that, to come to understand. You know, this questioner comes to Sri Nisargadatta. Oh, actually, I'll go to Swamiji first. Swamiji says later on that we're going to find out that even this idea of duty that we have in this life undergoes a change. So even the mundane idea of doing what we have to do is going to take on a change, he said. And that the greatest work is done only when there is no selfish motive to prompt it. Yet it is work through the sense of duty that leads us to work without any idea of duty. When work will become worship, nay, something even higher, then will work be done for its own sake. We shall find that the philosophy of duty, whether it be in the form of ethics or of love, is the same as in every other yoga. The object being the attenuating of the lower self, so that the real higher self may shine forth. The lessening of the frittering away of energies on the lower plane of existence, so that the soul may manifest itself on the higher ones. This is accomplished by the continuous denial of low desires, which duty rigorously requires. The whole organization of society has thus been developed, consciously or unconsciously, in the realms of action and experience, whereby limiting selfishness, we open the way to an unlimited expansion of the real nature of man. Total Swamiji. Awesome stuff in there. But he says a couple of things in there, that this idea of duty is the way. Why? Because doing something outside of yourself, doing something that you don't necessarily want to do, but you do it anyway. What does that do? That chips away at the command of the ego. It chips away at that false idea of being the body-mind. It makes you step outside of that realm and disobey the demand of the mind, disobey the demand of the body. You know, because that helps you to separate yourself and to realize you are not this body, you are not this mind. It's not an idea, it's not a philosophy, it is the reality of your being. It is what is actually true. And the only way you can find that out is by refusing to obey them. To wake up and understand that you're a slave. To wake up and understand that the reason you're exhausted is because you are running around serving the body every time it has a whim. Running around serving the mind every time it has a mood. You know, that it tells you, I'm sad, you know, I don't want to get out of bed. So you lay in bed. You know, even though you have things to do, things that you wanted to get done. You know, you're hungry, and so you can't get any food, so you're angry. And you're mean to the people you love. You know, you're short-circuited with your children. It's like you're a slave, but we think, oh, I do what I want, because we think we're the mind. So we think we're doing what we want. We think we're the body, we think we're doing what we want. But the fact is we're not the body, we're serving the body. The fact is we're not the mind, we're serving the mind. And through the simple idea of duty, you're put in a situation where you have to refuse the demand of your mind, the demand of your body. I don't want to go to work. Who cares? You got to go to work through that sense of duty. So you get up and go to work even though you don't want to, and you begin to realize, hey, there's an I in here who can override the mind. There's an I in here that can override the body. I don't want to get up. You have to get up. So you get up. Hey, there's an I in here that can override the demand of the body. And through that duty you come to understand, by that overriding, constantly pushing against it, refusing to be controlled by your mood, refusing to be controlled by your desires, refusing to be controlled by the feelings of the body and mind, by continually just shifting against that over time, because of all of that constant friction, it begins to shake loose. That, you know, like you take a rock and break it, and you keep wiggling it, keep wiggling it, keep it, and finally it breaks into two. That's the ripe coconut that Thakur was trying to tell us about. That's what he's saying to you. He's saying keep working at these lower things, this continual denial of what the mind and body wants. As long as you think that your mind and body is going to be unpleasant. At the beginning of spiritual life, it looks like you're giving up all the fun stuff, because you're confused. You don't see it as slavery. You don't understand. The biggest way to see that you're a slave is to understand that you can't say yes to something until you've learned to say no to it. And if you're not able to say no to it, you're a slave. You're a slave. If if your body's hungry and you don't feed it immediately, if you can't maintain an even mood, if you can't do what you need to do in the same spirit that you do when you're full, you're a slave. If the body wants sex, let's just be blunt. If the body wants that and you can't say no to it, you're a slave. So obviously not doing what you want because you're not in charge of what you want. The body says, I want this, and you have to run. The body says, I need this, you have to get up and get it. The mind says, I'm in this space, you have to act this way. You have to say this, you have to do that. You spend all your life running around cleaning up the dirty diapers of your body and mind, thinking that that's what you want, thinking that's who you are. And so Thakur is saying here, Vivekananda is saying here, that it's by doing this, by just following duty in the beginning, that's how this is going to break its magic or break its spell over you. He says there's a couple of ways to push it along faster, to get rid of the selfish motive. Stop asking yourself what you want. Stop asking all the time. When you get up in the morning, don't let the first question in your mind be, what do I want to do today? Stop it. What you want to do today is already done. You're free, you're ever blissful, ever at peace. There's no need for anything. What the body wants going to demand that day, what the mind is going to demand that day, what the things of that world are going to demand that day, that's another matter. So wake up and think, who can I serve today? How can I give today? How can I encourage somebody today? How can I love today? He says this work will be done for its own sake. When you're in the moment, you're present, and you're doing what's in front of you with full attention and full joy, seeing divinity in it, understanding that you're already free, that you're the captain of that ship, as I was trying to tell the kids this morning. He says by doing that, you're lessening the frittering away of energies on the lower plane. By breaking that bondage, which is why they call it bondage, by breaking that connection of being body and being mind, you lessen the frittering away of energy that is constantly being spent on things that have expiration dates, collecting things that you're going to have to collect again, picking up things that you're going to have to pick up again, over and over and over and over and over again. And if you identify with those things, you're frittering away all of that energy, losing all of that, gathering nothing. And the end of it is laying in a bed, unable to get up, and realizing that you've collected nothing, that you've got nothing to take with you on the journey beyond that. So we have a questioner that's with Sri Nisargadatta. He's a saint in Bombay. The questioner says, and let me get all the way through this because he says some things that put red flags up for Vedantists, but he solves it by the end, so hold on. So the questioner says, I'm full of desires and I want them fulfilled. How am I to get what I want? Maharaj, do you deserve what you desire? In some way or other, you have to work for the fulfillment of your desires. Put in energy and wait for the results. Questioner, where am I going to get that energy? Maharaj, the desire itself is the energy. Questioner, then why does not every desire get fulfilled? Maharaj, maybe it was not strong enough and lasting. Questioner, yeah, that's my problem. I want things, but I'm lazy when it comes to action. Maharaj, when your desire is not clear or strong, it cannot take shape. Besides, if your desires are personal, for your own enjoyment, the energy you give them is necessarily limited. It cannot be more than what you have. The questioner, and yet often ordinary persons do attain what they desire. Maharaj, after desiring it very much and for a long time, even then their achievements are limited. Questioner, And what about unselfish desire, Maharaj? When you desire the common good, the whole world desires with you. Make humanity's desire your own and work for it. There you cannot fail. Isn't that beautiful? That notion, that's the idea behind unselfish work, is adopting the desires of humanity, the service and good of all, seeing yourself in others. Then the strength of the desire, which is the energy itself to accomplish what you need. That's what he's saying. That's a great meditation too, because that'll take you some beautiful places to understand the nature of desire, to find out what that desire is. But it's the only motivating force in the universe. We know from Swamiji that it's ultimately love. That love is the root of all your desires, and that love is for its own sake. It's not for things. And so that's where that notion of working without worry about result comes to be. Where that idea of working for its own sake is because you're inundated in love. Everything becomes love for love's sake. It's an infinite well that you're drawing from, an infinite experience. And as long as you don't attach it to things with expiration dates, it has no ending. And it just keeps getting fuller and fuller and fuller, because the realization of the fact that you're sitting in an ocean of it becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. Maharaj goes on to say, whatever you name you give it, will or steady purpose or one-pointedness of mind, you come back to earnestness, sincerity, and honesty, truth. So those are the most important things that we always talk about when we start, when I start my lectures usually. Those three things. Whatever you name you give it, whether it's will or steady purpose or one-pointedness of mind, you come back to earnestness, sincerity, and honesty. When you are in dead earnest, you bend every incident, every second of your life to your purpose. You do not waste time and energy on other things. You are totally dedicated. Call it will, call it love, call it plain honesty. We are complex beings at war within and without. We contradict ourselves all the time, undoing today the work of yesterday. No wonder we are stuck. A little of integrity would make a lot of difference. You see, this moment, this is something I learned from Nachiketas, and I share it quite frequently in the Katha Upanishad, that God answers all of your prayers, yes. But the problem is he answers all of them. And he answers them in their proportion. So if you don't have single-mindedness, if you're not working for that one pointed desire, then what are you doing? You're doing a juggling act. You want to be famous, but you also want to sleep in. You know, you want to be a great singer, but you don't want to practice the piano. You want to be a. We're always thinking of, you know, in at least in the Western ideal of things in the movies, it's these people that have a natural talent that they didn't have to put any investment in, that they suddenly are just great at something. And we swallow that pill all the time. We go to these movies and we see these, you know, superheroes that have these superpowers that they didn't have to develop, that they didn't have to earn, they didn't have to work for. They're just naturally great. But the reality is, to get anything in this world that's worthwhile, you have to have concentration, you have to have focus, you have to have dedication. You have to have what? Those three things. You have to be earnest, you have to be sincere, and you have to be in integrity with yourself. You have to understand what your prayers are. You know, I'm going to camp on that one for a minute, because Thakur says that's the number one sadhana for this age, truth. You know, God can be realized through truth alone in this age. That you have to come to that space of thinking, doing, and being the same thing. Your words, your mind, and your actions have to be in alignment with each other. They can't be at conflict with each other. Then you're frittering away your energies. You know? And if you're obeying the body and mind, frittering away is what you're going to do, because it's going to demand a dozen different contradictory things. You know, I want to realize God. I want to get drunk. I want to go dancing. I want a good night's sleep. I want to feel good tomorrow, but I want to stay out all night tonight. You know, it's like there's 1,000 different things going on in the mind, and you're running after one thing after the other. You've had your good meal. Oh, I'm going to get fat. Now I'm going to go jogging. You know, so you go jogging. Oh, I went jogging today. I can afford a piece of cake. So then you eat a piece of cake. You know, and then you're like, I mean, it's just you're constantly working against yourself because you're not living a life of earnestness, sincerity, and integrity. You know, sincerity, earnestness, and truth. Those three things. Measure up. Think about it. Sit there and look at your desires and measure them against yourself. What is my real desire? What is it that I really want? I say that I'm overweight and I want to lose weight, and yet I keep eating that double scone chocolate, you know, gob ball at Starbucks, whatever it is. You know, why is that? Because you've become a slave to a nonsensical thing, a mind and a body that has no plan, a mind and a body that has no consistency, a mind and a body that's just going for anything that's within arm's reach at the moment, not caring about tomorrow at all. As long as you've developed that kind of identification of self, we're not going anywhere very quickly. We're stuck. We sit here and wonder why spiritual life is so hard. Why haven't I realized God? I've meditated almost 3 hours this week. You know, think about our desires, what we're doing. You're going to work 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day to pay for your desires. To pay for the house, the big TV, the car, the gas, the vacation, family, the retirement. 8 or 10, you know, whatever hours you do. If you're lucky these days, I guess it's 8. If you're medium lucky, it's 10. If you're the normal guy, it's like 12 or 14 hours that you're at the office. For what? To pay for all of these desires. And then we put in our 30 minutes of meditation in the morning. So you did 30 minutes of meditation for your spiritual life, and then you did 10 hours for your desires. And you wonder, why haven't I realized God? Why is it so difficult to realize God? You know, it's not fair. We're not being earnest. We're not being sincere. We're not being truthful. We're not putting our money where our mouth is. You know, we're saying we want something, and we're living completely contrary to it. And it's not that you have to stop going to work for 10 hours. That's not the point at all. You have to start working with a non-selfish attitude, doing the things of the day without the idea of getting the paycheck, doing them for their own sake, and doing them excellently because you're worshiping in that moment. You're fully present. You're typing out that letter to the boss. You're typing it very carefully and very concisely and making it the best letter you can type, not because you're giving it to the boss, not because you're trying to communicate, but because you're doing it for the Lord. You're worshiping. And everything that you want to give to the beloved, you do your very best at. And you do that, and when you're finished with it, when you hand it to the boss in your mind, you're handing it to Thakur, to Ma, to Hanuman, to whoever your ideal is. And you give it, and then you move on. You stay present. You take the joy of giving over something that you've done your best with, and hand it over no longer to your boss, but to your ideal. No longer glad because of ego, which goes away, but glad because love has manifested. You've worshipped, and that will never go away. That has chipped away at that identity. That has broken that cog of slavery and brought you into a new place, a new way of seeing that will eventually blow your circuits, that will eventually take you to the moon in a way that you can't even imagine. Call it whatever you want, will or steady purpose or one-pointedness. It will always come back to your earnestness, your sincerity, and your integrity. In the Great Master, it's said about Ramakrishna, it says, Ramakrishna had taught his mind since childhood, life is ephemeral. Do quickly what has to be done. And he performed every action with intense eagerness. Again, a little thinking brings about the fact that the mind becomes endowed with that disposition as the result of practicing one-pointedness and steadfastness. So Thakur understood this world is passing. Everything that you're doing is going to fritter away. One of the reasons I ended up as a monk, because I was an IT guy, and I was going to, working, doing these programs. And the nature, especially in the 90s, technology was changing so ridiculously quickly, you know, that you would write something and almost before you finished that program it was obsolete. You know, it was like, it was yesterday's technology in 6 months. And I understood, I was like, my God, at this rate I'm going to put my entire life into working for a program for the California State University system, and probably less than a year after I retire they'll replace it with something new. And something I spent my life on, you know, 10 hours a day, is going to be obsolete and useless. I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I wasn't going to do that. You know, wasn't going to do that. So that's that forgiveness that you need inside to be able to say, oh, wow, God, I'm not going to do it. I forgive myself for having done the wrong thing so long. I'm going to get up and go do the right thing. It doesn't have to be a change of job, like I said. It's a change of disposition. I was talking before this that, you know, when I broke my leg, it's just that change of mind that makes all the difference. You know, if you break your leg and you lay there in bed thinking about what you can't do, you're going to go crazy. The whole world's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. You're going to become more and more bitter and more lonely and more blah. You're going to go nuts. So you start imagining what, okay, those are the limits. How do I work with those limits and go beyond them? You start pushing against it. Start experimenting with what you can do instead of being caught up in what you can't do. And life gets big again. Things get huger. All expansion is life, Thakur says. Ramakrishna said the same. All expansion is life. All contraction is death. So this is the way you do your work during the day. It's real. It's not an old man telling you truths that's only true for old men. You know, it's not Thakur. It's not like you trying to teach a kid. It's like what you're trying to tell the kid is real. It's true. You've spent 50 years learning it. They can't see that. They can't understand that. And you sit there and struggle trying to let them understand some new way, saying it some different way, coming up with some poetry or with some interesting shloka or some koan or something that you can just find some way to spark a difference in them so they don't just see you spouting a philosophy, a religion, a dried up piece of junk meant for old people who are afraid to die. That's what Thakur is trying to do in all of these lectures and all of these beautiful things he's saying. He's trying to get us to break our cycle. You don't know what's best, you idiot. Wake up. You're 2 years old, for crying out loud. I'm telling you something that's for adults, from adults. Don't look at me like I'm an idiot. I'm trying to tell you something. And he goes on and on and on. There's a great mystic that lived in the 1920s, actually. I would call her a Christian mystic, but her path was to be a part of no path. She refused to join any religion, refused to join any church, refused to do anything. She really felt like, I don't want to become part of anything, I am that thing. And that became her practice, and she came to a wonderful realization that you can read about. She has several books out. But one thing she says in here, her name was Simone Weil. Most often attention is confused with a kind of muscular effort. If one says to one's pupils, now you must pay attention, one sees them contracting their brows and holding their breath and stiffening their muscles. If after 2 minutes they are asked what they have paid attention to, they cannot reply. You know, so we're asked for this single-mindedness, to practice this focus, this being in the present moment. And so immediately we set out to do something. You know, it's like the muscles tighten, the brows furrow, we're going to focus. When focusing and being at attention is an undoing, it's not a doing. It's stop being distracted, stop being involved in all the different thoughts and methods and calculations and exertions and whatnot. Be present. Keep your attention here in this moment. She said the joy of learning is indispensable in study, as breathing is in running. To live this life, joy is indispensable to get where we're going. It's your very nature. The sages tell us that over and over and over again. Satchit Ananda, that's what you are. That's what you are. We're like, oh yeah, cool, Satchit Ananda, yeah, I get it. You know, and then we're sad, and then we're depressed, and then we're frustrated, and then we're antsy, and then we're dissatisfied, and then we're hungry, and then we're moody. Sat Chit Ananda is what you are. You are intelligence itself, bliss itself. If you believed it, I'd be looking around at a bunch of drunken smiles right now. Everybody just kind of like gone in happiness. If we understood what that meant even a little bit, we would be drunk in that happiness, drunk in that bliss. Sat Chit Ananda is our nature. It's as necessary to us as breathing. As necessary to us as breathing. So take a joy in it, like Thakur said. He learned even as a boy. This life is fleeting. Do everything that has to be done. Do it now. Be eager about it. Attack it with a full-heartedness, a full-on focus and joy in it. For its own sake. For the fact of experiencing being alive. For the fact of experiencing this joy of learning that, I was trying to tell those kids this morning, I was like, you're a little silly because you're totally enamored with this phone, this tablet. And you've been born with a tablet in here that does everything that thing can do in spades. Way beyond it. And you're not even curious about it. How silly that is, Here we are experiencing one of the greatest mysteries of life. No idea what's going on. You can't figure out the slightest piece of it. And we get bored. Louis C.K. is a very vulgar comedian, but a wonderful comedian. Online, he does this great piece about sitting next to this teenage kid on the airplane who's complaining because the Wi-Fi on his tablet is slow. Louis C.K. is looking, he's like, you are 30,000 feet in the air in a multi-ton piece of steel flying above the continents below, with this tiny tablet that's hooked up to the whole wide world of information that can play movies and music and books and libraries, and you're complaining because the Wi-Fi is slow. It's like, get a grip. Open your, expand your vision of what's happening here. Be amazed, Broaden your mind. All expansion is life. All contraction is death. Look at your life. You have a body that obeys your every whim, and you don't even know how it works. I don't care if you're a master's in biologist or a postdoctorate in biology. At the end of the day, you have no idea how this thing works. You can't build even one cell in it, And yet we'll think, oh, we know something. We don't know anything. But how amazing! You sit there. If you sit there and knew what you were doing, if you could actually grasp this, you would just be like. Because that's amazing. That's amazing that you can do that. This machine, this thing that you're in, all you have to do is think. Raise your arm. You don't have to know how to do it. All you have to do is think it. Raise your arm. Say something. Breathe. And you think about all the things that it's doing right now at this moment, That piece of toast I had for breakfast, it's already dismantled it down to a molecular level. It's already thinking, okay, let's send some down to the ankles. Oh, he's burning a lot of energy with his mouth this morning. Send something up there. Give him something to say. All this stuff going on, we have no idea what's happening. And then we get bored. And then we get sad. And then we get depressed or whatever about life. Oh, this life. Wake up, Thakur says. You are Sat Chit Ananda. You are a mystery that will short-circuit this whole machine at some point. There's a mystery so big and so wide and so beautiful and so awe-inspiring, you won't be able to move when you see it. You won't be able to react. You won't be able to think when you see it. It's going to be phenomenal, beautiful. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, the writer in Proverbs says, and He will establish your plans. These are just a series of different scriptures here I'm going to read. In Colossians, which is a book in the New Testament, a letter that St. Paul wrote, he says, whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart, as working for the Lord and not for human masters. In all that you do, just like Thakur said, do it with full enthusiasm. Do it as an offering to the beloved, to that divinity within, to the things you don't understand in this moment. Do it with sincerity, with an earnestness, and with a deep love for humanity at large. Make an offering and let it go. In the moment, free, Pray that that manifestation, which is our Father, our Mother, that they may cut our bonds. He's going to give us 3 things to pray for here. So in that moment, in that offering, the prayer is, set me free. I don't want to work for human masters. I don't want to work for bodily masters. I don't want to work for mental masters. I want freedom. I'm tired of being a collection of limitations and restrictions. I'm tired of being confined to a gender and to an age and to a body and to a personality and to a social network and to a role that I have to play. I'm tired of having to be all of those things. Let me return to being Satchitananda, that gives freely and deeply, blissfully in every moment, never running out, because I'm not buying anything. I'm not needing anything. I'm manifesting. I'm letting that infinite self which is there come out in droves, just pouring out, full, not limited by my desires of body and mind, not limited by moods, not defined by imagined needs and shortcomings, not stuck, free. Pray that the mother or father may cut your bonds. Pray, take us by the hand as a father takes his son, and do not leave us alone. Don't forget for a moment how amazing this is. Don't forget for a moment how crazy this experience is, how full of wonder this whole experience is. Don't forget God. Don't forget that divinity present and pregnant in everything. The infinite possibilities that are in front of us at every moment. Don't forget God. Pray, I do not want wealth or beauty, this world or another, but I want you, God. I have become weary. Take my hand, God, and shelter me. Make me your servant. Be my refuge. Take refuge in the moment. Again, waking up to that freedom. Not taking refuge in God, that crusty old whatever, wherever. Not that thing that's unreachable other, that's judging and pointing and disappearing and far off and demanding. That has nothing to do with religion. Religion is manifesting, and manifesting is now, this moment. Be love itself. It's your nature, you've been told, by an old man trying desperately to give words that have a meaning for you. You are that, Satchitananda. Allow it. Open up. Attention is not a matter of work. It's a matter of manifestation, a matter of being present enough to open wide enough, to forgive yourself enough to let go of everything. There is no reason, there is no need, there is no effort. There's freedom. What do workers gain from their toil? King Solomon says in the Old Testament, the book of Ecclesiastes. It's a great book, actually. In the book of Ecclesiastes, it starts, King Solomon was the son of David, I believe. And he says, he's now taking over the kingdom. And God comes to him and says, okay, you're going to be the king. What do you want? I'll give you infinite pleasure, or I'll give you infinite wealth. Which one do you want? And Solomon says, he's such a hero, because I'd be like, well. He says, I don't want anything. I want the wisdom to lead your people wisely. And God is like blown away. God's like, wow, that's so cool. I'm going to give you everything. You can have everything. You can have it all. And so Solomon gets it all. And Solomon, because he's a cool dude, because he's very, very centered and very grounded and very wise, spends his life spending all this infinite money and this infinite pleasure to find out what life is about. And so the book of Ecclesiastes is about his one experiment after another that he does with his wealth and with his life to figure things out. And he says at the summary, at the end of it, he says, what do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden that God has laid on the human race. Okay, this is our burden. This is our trouble. He has made everything beautiful in its time. So he has put beauty continually in front of us, but only within its constraint of time. He has made everything beautiful in its time. but he has set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat, drink, and find satisfaction in their toil. This is the gift of God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing can be taken from it. So he's saying again, enjoy your work and walk humbly with your God. Be present with the divine that's everywhere manifesting. See that purity in everything and everyone. Let go of the needs and desires and the wants and the restrictions and the limitations, and see it all as infinite in this moment, the wonder of this experience of life. Worship. Make everything you do profound by surrounding it with knowing nothing, needing nothing. There's 12 steps. This comes from the Upanishad of the internet. The Internet Upanishad. It's a 12-step process for how to do exactly what we've been talking about this morning. It's the summary, the grand summary. Number 1, do the work. Don't be lazy. Do what you need to do. Don't be lazy. 2, stop waiting. It's time. This is the moment to be what you've always wanted to be, to do what you've always wanted to do. Stop waiting. 3, rely on yourself. The universe is you. Don't wait for God's blessing. Don't wait for the door to open. Don't wait for this to happen. Don't wait for your children to grow up. Don't wait for your boss to be in a good mood. Depend on yourself. Make it happen. Own it. It's all you in the end, Vivekananda says. He says that's the most surprising lesson he found in realization. Is in the end he realized it was all him. Meaning he understood himself to be everything, but that idea. 4, be practical. Success is not a theory. I remember when I was a total suburbanite when I was a kid growing up. Very little going for me, really, except an ego. But I always thought I was going to be a famous rock and roller, famous singer, you know. And I used to draw my own posters advertising my concerts, you know, and put them on my wall. And but I never practiced. I never learned to play an instrument. I never learned to sing. You know, I never went to try and get a job. You know, I just built fantasies up about what I wanted to be with no effort. So this is number 4, be practical. Your success is not a theory. Don't get lost in these wild ideas. Be practical. Here and now is what you've got. Make gold with it in this moment. 5, be productive early. Don't wait around all day. This is a good one. I actually changed. I used to after breakfast in the morning, I'd go up and I'd lay down on my bed and I'd pull out this very same tablet and I would start reading the news. And then after I'd finish the news, I'd go browse the Reddit subreddits, you know, and look at the pictures and the humorous things for the day. And then I'd be having such a good time, I wouldn't feel like getting up and doing my studies, you know. So I'd be like, oh, I'll just play a game of solitaire. So I'd sit there and play my game of solitaire, you know. And then a game of solitaire, like, well, I like that other game. What is that? Something Utopia or something, some little game. So I get caught up in that for a little while. And then, you know, you live your life like that, you never become anything. You just twittered away in distraction from one thing after another. When I got home from school, being the good suburbanite I was, I'd turn on the TV, and the first thing on was the Flintstones, and that was really cool. I liked the Flintstones. And the Flintstones was over, and then came Scooby-Doo. You can't turn off Scooby-Doo. So that was another half an hour, and Scooby-Doo would end, and then the Brady Bunch was coming on. Oh, I wonder what happened to Jan yesterday. So I had to watch the Brady Bunch, you know, and then after the Brady Bunch, the Partridge Family. I had to catch up on the Partridge Family, you know. And then it would be dinner time, I'd eat dinner, and then I had to watch Donnie and Marie and find out what was going on with them, and then Mork and Mindy. You know, and so like your mind, this need for distraction and for entertainment will take you nowhere quickly. And you won't realize at all that you're throwing a whole life away until you don't have it to spend anymore. Don't let that happen. Be productive early. So I now have corrected that thing in the morning. I cannot turn on my tablet until I have done my studies. Period. So I started that. So do that. Don't be a baby. Life is hard. Get on with it. Don't be remorseful in the face of the fact that you've got a lot of work to do, or you may have a lot to get accomplished. Don't be a baby. Keep the company you want to emulate. Hang around the people you want to be like. Don't waste your time hanging with people that you like who are getting you nowhere, who are increasing your troubles because they have the same desires that you do. Don't waste your time on things you can't control. All right, I'm going to move up faster here. Stop pretending. It's embarrassing. Stop pretending that you accomplished more than you have. Stop pretending that you are more than you are. Stop pretending you're working harder than you are. Stop pretending you're richer than you are. Stop pretending. It's embarrassing. Everybody knows, because everybody's doing it. It's stupid. Don't do it. Stop being a people pleaser. It's sad. Worship. Do it for its own sake. Stop working for worldly masters, whatever they are. Stop putting stuff in your body that is bad for you. Stop putting stuff in your body that's bad for you. Which means get some integrity about your life. You want to be healthy, so eat healthy. And when we're going to take Shankara's definition here, that doesn't just mean the food you're putting in your mouth. It means what you're putting in your ears. It means what you're putting in your eyes. It means, the things that you're exposing yourself to. If you're saying that you want a pure mind, I don't want to get specific. Stop reading romance novels, but that's not the point. You see what he's saying there? Be conscious of what you're eating. Be conscious of what you're praying. God is saying yes to all your prayers. Become aware of what you're asking for and what he's saying yes to, so that you don't just become a frittered, scattered, ordinary nothing. Be focused. Be earnest. Be sincere. Be honest. Stop doing the same things over and over, hoping that things will change. That's the first sign of insanity. I don't know whose quote that was. That the definition of insanity was to do the same things over and over and over again, hoping for a different outcome. If you want tomorrow to be different from today, live today differently. And it doesn't have to be big. It can be something very small. One little change. It doesn't have to be big. Some of the ones that I made when I put this lecture together, because I didn't want to be a hypocrite, I decided that my tablet was a big struggle for me, so I took care of that in the mornings, and then I took care of it at night. No electronics after 9:30 p.m. Period. I have to read a book before I go to bed at night. Not a whole book, but I have to read a book before I go to bed. Not a book on my tablet, because the tablet actually keeps you awake. It actually messes with your sleep. So make a small change like that. And once you've got that turned into a habit after 4 to 6 weeks, they say it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to create a habit, then pick up another small one. Equally small, equally meaningless. Work on that one for 4 to 6 weeks. It becomes a habit. You don't have to think about it anymore. It's the way you are. Pick up another one. But don't keep living the same life over and over and over again, thinking that things are going to change. Because they're not, until you change. So wake up. That's the 12th thing. Those are all of them. If you want them sent to you, I'll be happy to send them to you. So with that, I offer it to Mother.